Just weeks before my wedding, my fiancé suddenly grew distant, then called off our engagement without explanation. I was blindsided, until I discovered the truth. My own sister had sent him a fake pregnancy report, claiming she was carrying his child. Her calculated lie shattered everything I had built with him, and worst of all, she smiled as if she'd won. In one cruel move, I lost the man I loved, and saw who my sister truly was. Can you even imagine the gut-wrenching betrayal of finding out your own sister, just minutes before your wedding rehearsal, was faking a whole damn pregnancy? What she didn't know was that I had been quietly footing the bill for her entire life, her college, her luxury apartment, everything. So, I cut off the support, right then and there. And trust me, the fallout was absolutely wild. I'm Scarlet, I'm 30 now, and I vividly remember the exact moment the truth exploded. It was right before my wedding rehearsal dinner. Stephanie, my sister, made this dramatic announcement about her pregnancy complications, clearly trying to snatch my spotlight. Her smug little smile? It vanished the second I dropped the bomb that I knew she was lying. And then? I revealed I had been controlling her finances all along. The whole family gasped, absolutely floored, as I laid bare years of secrets, how I had been secretly funding Stephanie's lavish lifestyle. That night, it blew up our family dynamic forever. It ripped open years of lies, of blatant favoritism, of hidden resentments none of us were prepared to even look at. I can still see the shock, the betrayal, the sheer confusion on everyone's faces. Before I tell you exactly how it all went down, where are you watching from today? This whole family drama taught me a brutal lesson: karma, she always comes calling. So if you've ever felt that stab of family betrayal, hit that subscribe button and like this video. You will want to see how this revenge story ends. Growing up, Stephanie and I, we looked like a typical sister duo from the outside. She was years younger than me, always the baby of the family, even well into adulthood. I honestly don't think my parents ever truly saw how their blinding favoritism just ate away at our relationship, or how it chipped away at my self-esteem all through childhood. From elementary school on, I was the one, the responsible one. The achiever. I'd just do chores without being asked, pull straight A's, join every single extracurricular activity I could get my hands on. Meanwhile, Stephanie? She could do no wrong. She'd throw a tantrum when asked to clean her room, and my parents would just do it for her. She'd fail a test, and somehow, it was always the teacher's fault. The pattern was so damn clear, I had to earn every crumb of praise through sheer, exhausting hard work. Stephanie? She just existed, and the adoration flowed freely. Scarlet, you're the older sister. You need to set an example. My mom would say it like a broken record every time I dared to complain about the unfairness. That phrase became the damn soundtrack of my childhood, a constant, stinging reminder that my feelings, my needs, they always came second to Stephanie's comfort. Even with that crushing lack of parental support, I somehow aced it academically. I landed a full scholarship, Ivy League, studied computer science and business. My parents, bless their hearts, they came to my graduation. But they spent most of the day talking about how Stephanie was struggling with her college applications, effectively just shrugging off my achievement like it was nothing. After college, I dove headfirst into a tech startup, one of the first employees. Those early years were brutal. I'm talking 80-hour work weeks, literally sleeping under my desk, sometimes living on ramen just to save a buck. But man, the sacrifice paid off. By 26, I was the chief technology officer. And by 28, when the company was acquired, I walked away with enough money to never work another day in my life if I chose not to. The universe has a twisted sense of humor, though. My financial success, this incredible freedom I'd found, it happened to coincide with my parents' business collapsing. They'd owned a small, pretty successful retail store for 2 decades. But a cocktail of bad decisions, economic downturns, and ruthless competition from the big box stores. It left them teetering on the edge of bankruptcy. They didn't tell me directly. My dad, too proud, I guess. I only found out when my mother called me, sobbing, because they couldn't even make their mortgage payment. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to help them, but it had to be secret. I didn't want them to feel like failures, and honestly, I definitely didn't want Stephanie to know I had money. She'd already shown so many concerning flashes of jealousy anytime anything good happened in my life. I remember when I brought my boyfriend, Mark, home for Thanksgiving that year. Mark, he's incredible. Successful in his own right, a talented architect with his own firm. Kind, intelligent, and he treated me with so much respect. The second Stephanie met him, I noticed a shift. Her laugh became louder. She touched his arm, repeatedly, during conversation. And she managed to mention her single status at least 5 times during dinner. "Your sister seems nice," Mark said afterward, completely oblivious to her blatant flirting. "That's Mark," I thought. "Always seeing the best in people." "She can be," I replied vaguely, not wanting to taint his impression with my complicated feelings about her. By this point, the whole secret financial arrangement, the one that would later blow up in our faces, it was already well established. Through a maze of shell companies and trusts, I was quietly paying my parents' mortgage, their car payments, their health insurance, even their credit card bills. I'd also set up a scholarship for Stephanie's college tuition and was paying for her apartment near campus. None of them had a clue the money was coming from me. My parents genuinely believed they'd qualified for some special financial assistance programs. Stephanie thought her scholarship came from some anonymous alumni foundation. I wanted to help them, you see, without screwing up our relationship dynamic even more. Without becoming the family ATM. And most importantly, without ever having to hear my parents praise Stephanie for getting financial help, while I'd had to claw and fight for everything I ever had. Looking back now, I realize I was just enabling a whole host of unhealthy patterns instead of actually helping my family grow. But at the time, it felt like the kindest, smartest solution. I was preserving their dignity while making sure they were taken care of. What I didn't realize was just how spectacularly my secrecy would eventually collide with Stephanie's jealousy, creating the perfect storm that almost tore our family apart. The acquisition of our tech company wasn't just successful. It was the kind of exit that made headlines, got talked about in industry publications. Our tiny team had developed this revolutionary algorithm for data processing, and a major tech giant just had to have it. When the dust settled, I found myself with a net worth of over $12 million before my 30th birthday. I moved a chunk of it into conservative investments, donated to causes I deeply cared about, bought a comfortable, but definitely not extravagant house. And I set aside a significant portion for my family's needs. I wasn't flashy about my wealth. I drove the same old Honda I'd had for years and lived well below my means. Few people in my life knew about my financial situation, and that's exactly how I wanted it. When I first discovered my parents' business was failing, I was shocked by just how dire their situation had become. They were 3 months behind on their mortgage, maxed out on every credit card, and had even taken out predatory loans just to keep their store afloat. The sheer burden of that knowledge? It was overwhelming. These were the people who had always portrayed themselves as financially savvy, who had lectured me about responsibility, all while indulging Stephanie's every whim. "Miss Preston, are you sure you want to structure things this way?" my financial advisor, Thomas, asked when I explained my anonymous help plan. "Family financial entanglements can get complicated quickly." "I'm sure," I insisted. "They can't know it's coming from me." Thomas, bless him, helped me create several legal entities, just layers of buffers between my money and my family. We established a trust that appeared to be from a distant relative, a totally fake scholarship fund for Stephanie, and a business grant program that would conveniently select my parents for assistance. The paperwork was legitimate, but the sources of funding? All me. Within weeks, my parents received a letter informing them they'd been approved for a special refinancing program that would slash their mortgage payment by 60%. Another letter arrived, offering them a business stabilization grant. And Stephanie? She got notice that an anonymous donor had selected her for a full-ride scholarship that included tuition, housing, and even a monthly stipend. The change in their lives was immediate, and it was dramatic. My parents stopped looking like they were carrying the weight of the world at family dinners. Stephanie moved out of her cramped dorm room and into a luxury apartment near campus. Their gratitude was all directed at faceless institutions and lucky circumstances, never once at me. For a while, this whole arrangement felt perfect. I could help my family without totally messing up our relationship dynamic. But then, cracks started to show. Even though her education and living expenses were fully covered, Stephanie started dropping classes. By her junior year, she was barely enrolled part-time, even though she told our parents she was focusing on her major courses. I, as the scholarship provider, was getting the real enrollment reports from the university. More concerning was her pattern with relationships and jobs. She'd date someone for a few months, create some massive drama, break up, and then spend lavishly to heal her broken heart. She'd get hired somewhere, work for a few weeks, clash with management, quit or get fired, and then take months to find another position, all while maintaining her luxury lifestyle thanks to that scholarship stipend I provided. When Stephanie maxed out her first credit card at 21, I got a desperate call from my mother. "Scarlet, I hate to ask, but your sister is in a bit of trouble financially. We helped as much as we could, but with the store still recovering." I pretended to contribute a small amount, while secretly paying off the entire card through my financial network. This pattern, it repeated several times over the next few years, and the amounts just kept getting larger. When Mark proposed after 2 years of dating, I was ecstatic. We planned a wedding for the following spring. Nothing over the top, but beautiful and meaningful. My parents insisted on contributing, so I arranged for them to receive an unexpected insurance reimbursement that they could use for wedding expenses, effectively letting them pay with my money while preserving their pride. As wedding planning progressed, Stephanie's behavior became increasingly erratic. As my maid of honor, she was involved in so many aspects of the planning, but it felt like she was sabotaging at every single turn. Appointments were mysteriously rescheduled without my knowledge. Deposits went missing. Vendor communications were accidentally deleted from her phone. I tried to just attribute these incidents to Stephanie's general disorganization, but a pattern was emerging that I just couldn't ignore. One night, while reviewing my financial monitoring systems, I was doing that, I noticed unusual withdrawals from Stephanie's account. She had visited an urgent care clinic and made several purchases at a medical supply store. Around the same time, I found evidence she'd been researching pregnancy symptoms, medical terminology, and even how to create fake medical documents. A cold sense of dread washed over me. I cranked up the monitoring on her accounts and communications, justifying the invasion of privacy with my growing, sickening concern. What I discovered? It was worse than I ever imagined. Stephanie wasn't just jealous of my wedding. She was actively, meticulously plotting to ruin it. Wedding planning should have been one of the happiest times of my life, but Stephanie managed to turn it into a minefield of stress and doubt. As my maid of honor, she had access to every single detail, which gave her ample opportunity for sabotage. The first red flag? It waved about 3 months before the wedding. I arrived at the florist for a consultation, only to be told my appointment had been rescheduled for the following week. Stephanie had called, claiming to be my assistant, and changed it without telling me. When I confronted her, she feigned innocence. "I thought I told you. I must have forgotten to text you after they called me. Wedding brain, right?" She laughed it off, but something in her eyes didn't quite match her carefree explanation. A week later, our venue called, practically in a panic, because they hadn't received the deposit to secure our date. I distinctly remembered giving Stephanie a check to deliver during her lunch break, since the venue was near her apartment. The check had been cashed, but somehow the money never reached the venue. Stephanie claimed there must have been a mix-up at their office and oh so generously offered to handle it. I later discovered she had deposited the check into her own account and used my money to make a down payment on a new car. "It was just a timing issue with my account," she explained when I confronted her with the bank records. "I was going to transfer the money to them this week." I chose to believe her. I wrote it off as Stephanie's typical financial irresponsibility rather than outright malice. Looking back, I was so willfully blind. The engagement party provided even more evidence of Stephanie's true intentions. Mark's brother, James, pulled me aside during the celebration. "I don't want to cause drama," he said uncomfortably, "but I think you should know your sister has been texting Mark pretty frequently. He mentioned she kept asking him to meet for coffee to discuss wedding surprises for you." Mark confirmed this when I asked him privately, showing me the increasingly flirtatious messages from Stephanie that he had been politely deflecting. He hadn't mentioned them because he didn't want to create tension between us. "I thought she was just being friendly," he said, looking troubled. "Should I be worried?" "No," I assured him, though worry was starting to gnaw at me. "I'll handle Stephanie." When I confronted her about the messages, she burst into tears, claiming she was just trying to make sure Mark was good enough for me. Her performance was truly convincing, complete with trembling lips and wet eyes. I almost believed her, until I noticed she was checking her reflection in a nearby mirror to see how she looked while crying. Around this time, Stephanie started mentioning mysterious doctor appointments and vague health concerns. At first, she was coy about the details, dropping hints like breadcrumbs for the family to follow. "I don't want to worry anyone," she'd say at family dinner, "but the doctor wants to run some additional tests. It's probably nothing." My mother would immediately launch into a full-blown panic, demanding details, offering to accompany Stephanie to appointments. My father would grow quiet, his face etched with worry. The attention would remain squarely on Stephanie for the rest of the evening, any mention of wedding plans completely forgotten. During bridesmaid dress fittings, Stephanie created another scene by claiming she needed a larger size because she was retaining water due to her medical condition. When the seamstress, a seasoned professional, politely suggested alterations instead, Stephanie became tearful. "You don't understand," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "There might be a reason I need extra room in a few months, if you know what I mean." The other bridesmaids immediately swarmed her with questions and congratulations, despite Stephanie's theatrical insistence that it was too early to say anything definite. I watched this whole performance with growing suspicion, noting how her eyes constantly darted to gauge my reaction. My doubts continued to multiply, but family loyalty, that stubborn thing, kept me from voicing them. Then I found Stephanie's diary. I was helping my parents clean their attic. I absolutely knew I shouldn't read it. But when I saw my and Mark's names repeatedly mentioned, my curiosity, or maybe it was just a raw need for truth, overrode my ethics. The entries confirmed my very worst fears. Scarlet always gets everything. The perfect grades, the perfect job, the perfect fiancé. Mom and Dad pretend to be proud of me, too, but I see how they look at her. Now she's having this big wedding while I'm still single. It's not fair, but I have a plan that will make everyone forget about Scarlet's perfect day. By the time I'm done, all anyone will remember about this wedding is me. Another entry detailed her research into creating fake medical documents and her utterly deranged plan to announce a pregnancy, and then complications, during wedding festivities to steal the spotlight. She'd even practiced her concerned but brave face in the mirror. I should have confronted her immediately, but part of me, a naive, hopeful part, just couldn't believe my own sister would go this far. I needed more concrete evidence. And unfortunately, Stephanie was about to provide it. As the wedding week arrived, and family gathered from across the country, Stephanie's health concerns intensified. She had clearly scheduled her big dramatic revelation for the rehearsal dinner, where she would have the largest, most captive audience. I watched her preparations with a growing sense of dread, but also a fierce, cold determination. She had no idea that I knew her plan, nor did she realize how much power I actually held over her entire life. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change our family forever. The night of the rehearsal dinner, I slipped a folder of financial documents into my purse. Irrefutable evidence of my years of quiet, secret support. If Stephanie wanted to play with fire, she was about to learn that I controlled the whole damn forest. Our rehearsal dinner was held at the Belmont, this stunning upscale restaurant with a private dining room overlooking the city skyline. Mark and I had chosen it for its intimate atmosphere and incredible food. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm, soft glow over the long mahogany table where 40 of our closest friends and family gathered. The room buzzed with conversation and laughter as everyone enjoyed cocktails before the meal. I should have been savoring these moments, but my attention was glued to Stephanie, who was acting increasingly strange. She kept checking her phone, stepping away from mysterious calls, whispering with one of her friends who wasn't even part of the wedding party. She'd chosen to wear a form-fitting dress that emphasized her midsection, which she kept rubbing absently, just to make sure everyone noticed. "Are you feeling okay, Stephanie?" my mother asked, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You seem uncomfortable, sweetheart." "I'm fine, Mom," Stephanie replied with a brave, strained smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just a little tired. The doctor said I need to rest more in my condition." My mother's eyes widened, and she launched into a hushed but animated conversation with Stephanie. I watched them from across the room, noting how Stephanie strategically positioned herself so most guests could observe their apparently private discussion. Mark approached, handing me a glass of champagne. "Everything okay? You've barely smiled all evening." "Just wedding nerves," I lied, not wanting to ruin his night with my dark suspicions. "I'm going to check on the seating arrangements." Instead, I watched Stephanie like a hawk until she finally put down her phone to visit the restroom. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, I made my move. Her designer purse sat unattended at her place setting, her phone on top, still unlocked. I knew I had maybe 2 minutes before she returned. My heart pounded like a drum as I quickly picked up the phone, feeling like a thief, even though I was just after the truth. A text conversation with someone named Jess was open on the screen. "Stephanie, Jess, the fake report is perfect. Doctor's office letterhead and everything." "Jess, OMG, are you really going through with this?" "Stephanie, hell yes. The announcement tonight. Then complications during the ceremony. All eyes on me. Not Miss Perfect." "Jess, what if someone calls the doctor to check?" "Stephanie, no one would dare. Besides, I'll have a miscarriage after the honeymoon. Perfect timing to ruin their return." "Jess, your sister will hate you forever." "Stephanie, she'll get over it. Besides, she has everything else. I deserve one day where people care about me." I quickly scrolled through more messages, finding photos of the forged pregnancy documents, details of her plan to fake crying spells, and eventually a dramatic collapse during our vows. My hands shook with a potent mix of rage and heartbreak. I quickly took photos of the conversations with my own phone, then returned Stephanie's phone exactly as I found it. When Stephanie returned, our eyes met across the room. I maintained a neutral expression, but something in my gaze must have alarmed her, because she quickly looked away and busied herself talking to one of the groomsmen. Dinner was served, and as coffee and dessert arrived, my father stood to make a toast. Just as he raised his glass, Stephanie dramatically placed her hand on her stomach and gasped. The timing was impeccable, interrupting the father of the bride moments before he could praise his daughter on her special weekend. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice carrying perfectly across the now silent room. "I wasn't going to say anything this weekend because I didn't want to take attention away from Scarlet and Mark, but—" She paused for effect, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been having some complications with my pregnancy. The doctor said I need to take it easy, but I wanted to be here for my sister." The room erupted in concerned murmurs. My mother rushed to Stephanie's side while my father stood frozen, toast forgotten. Mark looked at me in confusion, clearly wondering if I'd known about this supposed pregnancy. I felt a strange, eerie calm descend over me as I stood up, wine glass in hand. The room gradually quieted as people noticed me preparing to speak. "Thank you for your concern for my sister," I said, my voice steady, clear. "But I think we should clarify something. Stephanie, would you like to tell everyone the truth about your pregnancy, or should I?" Stephanie's face paled, but she recovered quickly. Scarlet, I know you're upset about the timing, but this isn't about you for once. I smiled tightly. You're right. It isn't about me. It's about you lying to everyone in this room. There is no pregnancy, is there, Stephanie? Gasps echoed around the table. Stephanie's expression hardened. How dare you? Why would I lie about something like this? To ruin my wedding, according to your text with Jess. I held up my phone, showing the screenshots I'd taken. The fake doctor's report was a nice touch. Very convincing letterhead. Stephanie's face contorted with rage, but then, unbelievably, it shifted to a smug smile. You went through my phone! That's a new low, Scarlet. Always the perfect sister, right? Well, at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Everyone thinks you're so successful, but you're just a pathetic control freak who can't stand when someone else gets attention. It was the moment I'd been waiting for. I reached into my purse and pulled out the folder I'd prepared. Speaking of control, I said quietly, my voice cutting through the suddenly thick air. Did you ever wonder how you could afford that luxury apartment on part-time retail wages? Or how our parents magically recovered from near bankruptcy 5 years ago? Or where your scholarship came from after you failed half your classes? Stephanie's smug expression finally faltered. My mother made a small, distressed noise. Scarlet, this isn't the time. My father began, but I cut him off. Actually, this is exactly the time. For years, I've been funding this entire family. The mortgage on your house, Dad. The business recovery grant, Mom's medical bills, Stephanie's apartment, car payments, credit card debt, and the scholarship that mysteriously never required any academic performance. I opened the folder and placed several documents on the table. It's all here. Bank transfers, shell companies, trust arrangements. I own the company that owns your house. I'm the anonymous donor behind Stephanie's scholarship fund. I've paid off her credit card 7 times in the last 3 years. The room had gone completely silent. Mark was staring at me in shock. This was news to him as well. My mother had collapsed into her chair, one hand clamped over her mouth. My father stood rigidly, his face ashen. Stephanie's expression shifted from confusion to utter horror as she finally processed what I was saying. You're lying, she whispered, but her voice lacked any conviction. The pregnancy report isn't the only fake document in this family, Stephanie. The difference is, mine were created to help you, not hurt you. I turned to address our stunned guests. I apologize for this family drama. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. Mark and I look forward to celebrating with you at our wedding tomorrow, assuming we still have one after all these revelations. As I walked out of the dining room, I heard Stephanie begin to sob. Real tears this time. Not the performative ones she'd perfected over the years. Part of me felt terrible for exposing her this way, but a much larger part felt an overwhelming, bone-deep relief. The intricate web of lies I'd been maintaining for years had become its own suffocating trap. And maybe, just maybe, this painful truth was our only way forward. Did your family ever hide important secrets from each other, thinking it was for the best? I genuinely thought I was protecting everyone, but keeping all these financial arrangements secret just set us up for an even bigger, more destructive explosion. If you're still with me at this halfway point, drop a comment about whether you think I should have revealed everything earlier, or if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your family, even if it meant harsh honesty. This story is about to take an even more intense turn that I absolutely never saw coming. After I left the rehearsal dinner, I just drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, ignoring the constant buzzing of my phone. Mark finally reached me with a text that simply read, "I'm at your place whenever you're ready to talk. No pressure. I love you." His simple message, those 3 words, they just broke through my emotional numbness. I drove home to find him waiting on the porch swing, 2 glasses of wine beside him. When I sat down, he didn't pepper me with questions or judgments. He just put his arm around me and waited. "I should have told you," I finally said, the words heavy. "About the money. About all of it." "Yes, you should have," he agreed quietly. "But I understand why you didn't." "You do?" Scarlet, I've watched how your family treats you for 2 years. You're the responsible one, the fixer, the achiever who never gets the same praise or attention as your sister. You found a way to help them without becoming their ATM or changing how they see you. It wasn't honest, but it was kind, in a complicated way. His understanding brought fresh tears to my eyes. What happens now? That depends, he said, looking into my eyes. Do you still want to marry me tomorrow? Despite everything, despite the sheer chaos of the night, I laughed. A genuine, surprised laugh. That's the only thing I'm still sure about. Mark smiled and squeezed my hand. Then we'll figure out the rest together. My moment of peace was shattered by my phone ringing again. My father. For the 12th time. I finally answered. We need to talk, he said, his voice grave. Everyone's at the house, including Stephanie. The emergency family meeting was exactly as uncomfortable as I expected. My parents' living room, the very house I'd secretly been paying for, felt suffocating. My mother sat rigid on the sofa, eyes red from crying. My father paced by the fireplace. Stephanie was curled in an armchair, looking smaller, more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. Explain everything, my father demanded the moment I walked in. From the beginning. So I did. I told them about the company acquisition, the money I'd made, discovering their financial troubles, and my elaborate, twisted plan to help without changing our family dynamic. I explained the shell companies, the fake scholarship fund, the business grants, and all the times I'd secretly bailed out Stephanie. Why didn't you just tell us? My mother asked, her voice breaking. Why all the deception? Would you have accepted my help? I countered. Would it have changed how you treat me compared to Stephanie? Or would I have just become the family bank while still hearing about how special and precious she is? My father flinched at my words. We don't favor her, Dad. Please, I interrupted, the words tumbling out, years of resentment surfacing. My entire childhood I heard, why can't you be more like Stephanie, when it came to being sociable? But never, why can't Stephanie be more like Scarlet, when it came to responsibility or achievement? I paid for her apartment while she dropped out of classes, and you still praised her for her independence while asking why I worked so much. An uncomfortable, heavy silence filled the room. Finally, Stephanie spoke. I didn't know, she said quietly, about the money, any of it. That was the point. But why? Why help me when I've been so awful to you? Because you're my sister, I said simply. And because I thought if I removed the financial stresses, maybe our family could just be normal. Stephanie slowly unfolded herself from the armchair and walked to the center of the room. I need to tell you all something, she said, her voice steadier than I expected. Scarlet's right about the pregnancy. I faked it. I was going to pretend to have complications during the ceremony tomorrow. She swallowed hard. But that's not all. I also contacted Mark's ex-girlfriend and invited her to object during the ceremony. And I've been trying to get Mark's attention since the day they got engaged. My mother gasped. Stephanie, how could you? Because I'm jealous, okay? Stephanie's voice rose, raw with emotion. I've always been jealous of Scarlet. Everyone thinks I was the favorite, but being the favorite just meant no one expected anything from me. Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of someone like her? Perfect grades, perfect career, perfect fiancé. I'm a college dropout working retail at 26. And now I find out I couldn't even manage that without my big sister secretly funding everything. Her raw honesty stunned me. For the first time, I saw my sister not as my rival or the family favorite, but as someone who'd been just as damaged by the same family dynamic that had hurt me, just in a different, insidious way. My father sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 63 years. We failed you both, he said quietly. Scarlet, we put too much responsibility on you and took you for granted. Stephanie, we didn't give you the structure and expectations you needed to thrive. My mother wiped her eyes. What happens now, Scarlet? Will you keep supporting us? The naked anxiety in her question confirmed what I'd always feared, that financial support was the only real value I had to them. Before I could answer, Mark spoke from the doorway, where he'd been quietly observing the whole painful scene. "I think that's the wrong question, Mrs. Preston," he said gently. "Maybe the first question should be how to rebuild trust in this family, not who's paying for what." I never loved him more than in that moment. "The wedding is postponed," I announced. "Mark and I will decide later if and when we reschedule. As for financial support," I took a deep breath, "it stops today. All of it." "But the mortgage," my father began. "You have 2 months of payments left in the account. That's enough time to figure out your next steps. You can't just cut us off," my mother protested. "I can. And I am. Not to punish you, but because this arrangement isn't healthy for any of us. I've enabled dependencies that have stunted our growth as a family." My pronouncement was met with shocked silence. Stephanie was the first to recover. "She's right," she said, surprising everyone. "This isn't normal or healthy. I need to stand on my own 2 feet for once." In the days that followed, our extended family inevitably took sides in the conflict. Some cousins thought I was cruel for cutting off support, while others praised me for finally establishing boundaries. I started seeing a therapist to process my incredibly complicated feelings about my family and my own role in creating that unhealthy dynamic. Mark stood by me through it all, never judging, always supportive. One night, as we discussed whether to reschedule the wedding or simply elope, he offered an insight that would totally change my perspective. "You know what's interesting about your family?" he said. "You've all been living according to a script about who you are, the responsible one, the favorite, the struggling parents. But none of you chose those roles. You inherited them and never questioned them. So what do we do?" I asked. "Rewrite the script," he said simply. "All of you." With that thought burning in my mind, I approached the task of rebuilding my family relationships, not as the responsible big sister or secret benefactor, but simply as Scarlet, figuring it out one day at a time. 1 month after the rehearsal dinner revelation, the full impact of the financial reckoning hit my family like a tidal wave. Stephanie received an eviction notice when she couldn't make her rent payment. Her car, which I'd been making payments on for years, was at risk of repossession. My parents, who had been living in a house they couldn't afford and maintaining a lifestyle far beyond their means, faced the harsh, unforgiving reality of their actual financial situation. I maintained my distance, but stayed informed through Mark, who had unexpectedly become the family mediator. He reported that my parents were arguing constantly about money, my mother wanting to ask me for help, my father insisting they needed to solve their own problems for once. "Your dad's looking at retirement account options," Mark told me after having coffee with my father. "And your mom is researching how to sell the house themselves to avoid realtor fees." "And Stephanie?" I asked, trying to sound casual, trying to hide the knot in my stomach. "She's applied for 7 jobs in the past week. Actual full-time positions, not just retail." I felt a complex mix of emotions, guilt for their struggles, pride that they were actually taking action, and a lingering hurt from years of family dynamics that had led to this painful breaking point. After 6 weeks of separation, I agreed to meet my parents for lunch at a modest diner,